Hello and welcome to the last video of the View 71TG Lantern Core build. Let's get into it. Alright, so I've got my tube bending table all set up, and I'm going to go through and show you everything that I have and what I use to bend my tubing with. You can go with more or less. A lot of guys just freestyle this. I don't tend to freestyle it as much because I want to get fairly close to my bends. I don't want to waste a lot of pipe. But anyway, what I start out with when I started putting all my equipment together is I started with a kit from Thermaltake. I'll show you that kit. It's a Thermaltake, there should be a name on it, yeah, Pacific Hard Tube Bending Kit. It's by Pacifica, which is a sub company of Thermaltake. And what you get in that is you get 3 different types of bending tools. You get a 360, a 180, 90, and a 135. And you get the cutter, which is a really solid cutter. It's very well made. You get the end cleaner. It cleans the inside and the outside of the tube, and then you get an insert. This is the small insert that comes with it, and then I got a bigger insert tube with my M360 kit. So you get all those. It's a good starter to let you get the basics for what you need. I mounted it on a board so that I could bend and keep it all from coming apart. It's too hard to hold it in your hand. So I have that. I have a multitude of different types of pipes. I've got several pieces, several different sizes. I'm using 16 millimeter 5/8 OD, and this particular box right here came with the M360 kit from Thermaltake. So I got that, and I got this inside tube as well. So you're going to need all different types of sizes. Make sure you keep the same size. You're going to need a multitude of connectors. You're going to need a couple of different types of ways to measure. You're going to need good couplings. I like to use the Thermaltake couplings because they're they have triple O-rings in them, and I think these are really, they're not foolproof, but they're as close as you're going to get. These are called the C Pros. You can buy them in 6-packs and singles, but I highly recommend these because you've got a lot of money in the equipment, and you don't want that leaking when you start up the pump. So I highly recommend those. You're going to need a industrial heat gun, the one that actually stands up on its end and you can turn on and leave it on. You're going to definitely need that. Okay, you're going to need some soapy water because you have to soap the inserts down before you put them into the tube, and you'll have to do that every time you do a tube. So you definitely need to keep soapy water there, and you know, just a good place to work. I like this little table set up because it's the right height, and I can do all my bends on the table. Then I can walk over to the PC and check them, and then, you know, just keep making my adjustments. But just remember, you are going to make mistakes. Okay. Have some extra tubing, and then, you know, get in your mind what you want to do. And the way you do that is you go ahead and set up your computer, set up all your equipment so it's inside the case, and you got a good look at the case. Then you can start putting your mind, or wrap your mind around how you want your tubing to bend. So what I do to make that a lot easier is I do this. I've got a little dry erase board, and I make an outline of my computer setup, and here's my radiators, fans, where all my couplings are, it's where my CPU is, where my GPU is, and where my pump is. And then I just play with it, and I just, you know, wipe it off and restart until I figure out everything I want. And then when I get it wrapped up here, then I go back through, check everything on the case. Then I go back, I count up all my different connectors, and then I go and I buy my connectors and my tubing. So, you know, by setting it up this way, I knew I needed 2 90s for the CPU, 2 90s for the graphics card, and then the rest I could get away with some extensions. I think I had 2, 3, I had 5 extensions, 4 for the 90s and 1 coming out of the pump, and then all the connectors. So I figured out, I wrote up a shopping list, and I think I ended up going to Micro Center for most everything, but I did order a couple things off online. anyway, that's the way I do it. You can do it any way you want to, but it gave me the opportunity to really mess with everything, figure out what I needed, get my shopping list down, and then I didn't have to make a bunch of trips to Micro Center, which is about a 45-minute drive for me. So I have everything prepared now, and I know where I'm going to start. I'm going to start on my GPU and work my way to the short pieces because there are going to be some tight fits in there. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get started bending, and we'll let it run. Okay, I'm going to make a few bends just to show kind of how to do it from start to finish. You just and there's a dozen videos on YouTube about guys that do this for a living. So if you want a lot better than me, you can definitely get a hold of those guys and watch that stuff. Anyway, you want to make sure that you get the inner tubing in there nice and make sure it's got some good soapy water on it. Okay, and I just wipe mine off. You can wear gloves if you want to. Some guys wear gloves. I don't. I do sometimes, but most of the time I don't. So you have put the inner tube in, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a 180 because that's what I need for my first bend, because I'm going to start it on a 180 and then do a couple other bends. So I want to kind of figure out where I'm going with it. So I'm going to want about 4 inches is what I'm looking at. So I just mark the center, and don't use a marker, I just use my finger, and I know that I want to be right about here. That'll give me about a 4-inch bend in the middle. So then you just go ahead and turn it. I use it a low temperature. Some guys use high temperature, but I use low and just take a little longer. And I just put that right over it. I do circle mine. I spin it, and I do move it back and forth. If you're doing a 180, you know, you need about 3 to 4 inches to make a good turn on a 180. So you want to just go back and forth, keep it about 2 inches, I guess. And the way to tell when this gets ready is it will start drooping on its own by the weight of it. One side will. And I just keep circling it, and just take your time, because if you go too early, it's going to mess it up and it'll be all kind of stretch cracks, and if you go too hot, it'll bubble. So, you know, I just kind of keep playing with it in my hand. It's like a trial and error thing. I mean, it took me a few bends to figure it out. It's getting pliable now. Now it's starting to kind of move on its own. See, I see it, but it's still not ready yet. Now, see, that's when it starts moving on its own. Now it's getting pretty pliable. And if it's not good enough, you're not going to get a good bend on it. You'll just be redoing it again if you don't ruin the piece. Okay, just take it over here. Get about my 4 inches is about right there. I just take it, wrap it around, and then I square it up right on the ends. Now, some guys will actually just dip this in water after they get, you know, a few seconds on it. I don't tend to do that until after I've really got it shaped the way I want it, because I think it shocks it, and also I think it, you know, I just don't like the way it looks when you cool it fast like that. So I tend to just hold it. Just let that set in there. You can touch this. It's hot, but it's not going to burn you. So, and I just keep that in that groove. If you take it out prematurely, or you haven't got a good enough heat on it all the way around this bend, when I release this, it's going to spring back. But if I've done it right, then I'm going to have to just pull it off straight. And I don't know how many seconds it takes, but 30, 40 seconds maybe. It's springing back a little bit, but not much. and it's going to have a little play in it, which is good. So I want it to be springy. So there's your 180 right there. Then you can go ahead and pull this out, and you can put it back in. I mean, it's not going to be hard. So just twist it a little bit. Go ahead and put it back in the water. Okay, and if you've got to bend this again or rebend it, you can slide that right back in there, because I'm going to do some other bends with it. I'm going to put it right back in the tube, and I'm going to go at it again. So now I'm going to go test fit this, and then I'll be back. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and do a 90. I just put a little dot on where I want it. Then I'm going to heat it up. I'm going to put it in this 90, and because I got this curve on it, I'm going to have to do some of it by hand, but it'll get me pretty close, and then I can do the rest of it by hand. Just finishing up by hand. And there's the 90. Now I'm going to check that. It's got an angle on it, and that's why I put the dot on there, so I could see the angle that I wanted to get. All right, I've got all my tubes bent. Everything is in place, and what I've done is I've just pre-fitted everything. This isn't the actual finish, because I haven't went back and finished all the ends yet, but I fitted everything. I checked all of the connectors and made sure they all fit properly, and that they all screw in the way they should. I went ahead and mounted the pump. I've got everything ready to go. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of these back apart. I'm going to wash them out with water. You need to, I don't know if you can see it or not, but I can. I see little bits and pieces of plastic and things in these tubes, and you don't want any of that going through to your CPU. So I'm going to take all of these back off. I'm going to take everything off of them. I'm going to wash them through the sink, clean everything up really good, and then I'm going to work on the ends, cleaning all the ends up. The ends need to have a 45-degree angle on them, and so that they'll really flush up well inside the connector, so you don't have any leaks. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to take it all apart, I'm going to wash everything, and then I will come back and show you how to do your connections to make sure that your tubes don't leak. So we'll be right back. Okay, let me show you a little bit about cleaning these up. So what you want to do is this is where the tool that you got with Thermaltake comes into play. This tool has an inside, this one's for the inside, and this one is for the outside of the tube. And this automatically gives you that 45-degree angle that you're looking for. which is right on that edge right there. Okay, so if you're using one of these, you're going to get it right. You're just going to put it in and just twist it like this, and you'll see the plastic's going to fly. Okay, you can do this with sandpaper. I clean mine up with sandpaper still because I like it to be nice and smooth. And you're not talking about, you know, just destroying the thing. Okay. That's kind of the 45-degree edge that you're looking for right there. Okay. Then when you get done with that, just hit the inside of it just to make sure it's clean. You don't have to go crazy on the inside. Okay. That's why we're going to wash these out, because we're going to get a lot of stuff in them. Okay. Then I take a sanding block. This is just standard sanding block like you use on your walls when you're painting and things like that. So I just take that sanding block and then I just rub that on that sanding block, and I'm just taking all the burrs off of it. Okay, and you can feel it with your finger and you'll know when you've got it nice and smooth. Okay, that's what you want to do to every one of these. You want to get that nice 45 degrees on there, and you want it nice and smooth before you put it on for real. Okay, so I've got a bunch of them to do, so I'm going to get on it, and then I'll be back, and then we'll put everything back in, and we'll be ready to test. Alright, I've got everything washed. I've got all my tubes washed up, cleaned, got the ends all prepared. Now I'm ready to put everything back together for the final. So now I'm going to go through, put each one of my connectors back on, and I'm going to take a lot of care this time to make sure that I've got everything right. I've got everything turned properly. I don't want to find any, and I'm going to inspect everything as I go along. Now on these collars from Thermaltake, there's a concave end and a square end. The concave end always goes towards the O-ring, and when you put them on for the final, you want to make sure that they're nice and flush so that you just have the edge of the pipe right on the edge of them, and that way you make the best connection you can. So I'm just going to go ahead and let it run, and I'm going to go ahead and put these all back in, and then we'll be just about ready for our test run. Okay, we're ready to go ahead and start the system up and check for leaks. I highly recommend that you spend whatever time you need and have as many paper towels as you need to protect your system. I always kind of pull my power supply out. I make sure everything's covered. I go in and cover my CPU and everything, because you got a lot of money here, and on the first startup you never know. So I'm going to go ahead and get everything ready on the water. I've got everything pretty much full on. I'll add a little more, and then we're going to fire this up and see if we've got any leaks. I'm using distilled water, and I think that's I highly recommend that you use distilled water until you're ready to put your actual coolant in. I'm actually going to use coolant. I don't know exactly what colors yet because it's going to be up to my son, but I have coolant bottles. But use distilled water, and I recommend you probably run it 12 to 24 hours just to make sure. Let's go ahead and fire this up. Okay, and as you're filling, this is going to bleed up and down, so you're going to have to keep filling this back. Especially for this loop, I've got a lot of complex loops here, so. Okay, I've got everything pretty much put back together. I put my power supply back in. I went ahead and hooked up my RGBs. Everything. I had a lot of things unhooked because I didn't want to have them running if I had a leak. So I'm going to go ahead and let it run and cycle now. And I'm going to go ahead and let this run probably 12 or more hours and just make sure I don't have any drips or leaks. But it looks really good. I think my son's going to be really happy with it. So I'm going to look into doing some programming. All of these RGBs are all programmable through the CPU, so it's going to be interesting to see what all this can do. Here's just a few seconds of me 3D printing the Hope lantern symbol. I did 4 symbols for this build for my son. Alright, and here is one last look at the finished build. You can see the red lantern, green lantern. I've got a couple of blues on top, a green lantern on top, a Hope down in the back, and there is a yellow in the back there as well. And this is basically a completed machine, and all my son needs to do is go ahead and put the real antifreeze in, the coolant, and then his color, which I have for him. So it's a really fantastic build. I had a great time doing it. If you liked what you saw, please give us a thumbs up, or better yet, go ahead and subscribe to the channel.